The storm outside mirrored the chaos brewing within the walls of Ethan's home. Thunder roared with a ferocity that shook the very foundation of their dilapidated house, each crack of lightning illuminating the cracks snaking across the aging plaster. The windows rattled under the relentless assault of rain, and the faint yellow glow of a flickering bulb cast eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper. The air was thick with the dampness of wet earth seeping through the cracks in the floorboards, mingling with the acrid scent of cigarette smoke that seemed to cling to every surface. Ethan sat hunched over a scarred wooden table, his trembling hands clutching a pencil as if it were the only thing anchoring him to reality. His eyes were fixed on the sketch before him, a crude but vibrant depiction of a city skyline, alive with color and possibility. To Ethan, it wasn't just lines on paper, it was hope, a dream he clung to despite the suffocating weight of his surroundings. But the world around him sought to crush that dream. Robert stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by another jagged bolt of lightning. He exhaled a cloud of cigarette smoke, his lips curling into a sneer. "Still wasting your time with this garbage?" he spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think anyone gives a damn about these scribbles? You'll end up a starving artist begging for scraps, just like those losers you idolize." Susan didn't even look up from the sink, where she mechanically scrubbed dishes. Her sigh carried the weight of resignation. "Ethan, no one around here has ever made it big doing whatever it is you're doing. Be realistic. Get a proper job. Stability, that's what matters." Their words cut deeper than any blade could. Each syllable dripped with mockery, chipping away at the fragile armor Ethan had built around himself. But he clenched his jaw, refusing to let them see how much their words hurt. Instead, he focused on the sketch before him, willing himself to believe that his dreams were worth more than their ridicule. Jake lingered quietly by the doorway, his small frame barely visible in the dim light. At 10 years old, he didn't fully understand the tension crackling in the room, but he understood enough to know that his brother was hurting. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Jake crept into Ethan's room. In his hands, he held a lopsided sandwich wrapped clumsily in wax paper. "For you," he whispered, his voice trembling but resolute. "I'll help you, Ethan. I promise." Ethan's heart broke at the sight of his little brother's earnestness. He pulled Jake into a tight embrace, swallowing the lump in his throat. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, he felt a flicker of warmth amidst the cold. Jake believed in him when no one else did, or so he thought. Then there was Sarah. She lived next door, a quiet girl who always seemed to notice things others overlooked. That evening, while her mother called her in for dinner, she left a tiny scrap of paper on their doorstep. On it, scrawled in careful handwriting, were four simple words: "I like your drawings. Don't give up." When Ethan picked it up, his heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just encouragement, it was validation. Someone out there saw value in what he created, even if his own family refused to. That little note became a lifeline, tucked safely under his mattress alongside the sketches he cherished most. But fate wasn't done testing him yet. The next morning, he woke to find every single one of his drawings torn to shreds. The fragments littered the trash can like confetti at a funeral. Robert leaned against the kitchen counter, smirking as he sipped his coffee. "This is what happens to useless things," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "Maybe now you'll focus on something worthwhile." Something inside Ethan snapped. The rage that had been simmering beneath the surface boiled over, threatening to consume him whole. He packed a bag in silence, tears streaming down his face as he stuffed his remaining supplies into a warm backpack. Jake watched from the corner, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Ethan," he started, but Ethan shook his head. "I have to go," he whispered. "Tell Mom and Dad. Tell them I'll prove them wrong." And with that, he stepped out into the storm, leaving behind the only life he'd ever known. The rain soaked through his clothes within seconds, but he didn't care. All he could think about was survival and proving to the world and to himself that he was worth more than they believed. The biting cold of a New York winter crept into every corner of Ethan's life, much like the despair that had taken root in his heart. The snow fell relentlessly, blanketing the city in a pristine white that belied the harsh reality beneath. Inside their tiny fifth-floor walk-up apartment, no elevator, no heat, the air was as frigid as the streets outside. Ethan sat hunched over a rickety table, wrapped in a threadbare coat that did little to shield him from the icy draft. Seeping through the cracked window, his breath formed ghostly clouds in the dim light of a flickering bulb, and his fingers trembled not just from the cold but from exhaustion. Mike, his roommate, paced back and forth, clutching a crumpled eviction notice. "We're screwed, man," he muttered under his breath. "Jenkins is serious this time. If we don't pay by Friday, he's kicking us out." Ethan stared at the $20 bill lying on the table between them. It was all they had left after paying for groceries, a meager attempt to stretch what little resources they had. He clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. How could he dream of becoming an artist when survival itself felt like an insurmountable challenge? The next morning brought another blow. Mike lost his job at the diner. Without warning, he was handed a pink slip and told there was no more work for him. Panic set in as the two men stared at each other across the cramped kitchen. "What are we supposed to do now?" Mike asked, his voice trembling. Ethan didn't have an answer. Over the next few days, desperation drove them to extremes. Mike began eyeing online forums offering quick cash for organs. One night, Ethan caught him scrolling through a shady website on his phone. "You can't be serious," Ethan snapped, snatching the device away. "What choice do I have?" Mike shot back, his voice cracking. "At least one of us will survive if I sell it. You've got potential, Ethan. Don't throw your life away like I did mine." But Ethan refused to let Mike sacrifice himself. Instead, he took on another job at a freezing warehouse, working graveyard shifts and loading trucks. Sleep became a luxury he couldn't afford. His body screamed in protest, muscles aching and eyes burning with fatigue. Still, he pushed forward, driven by a stubborn determination to keep both himself and Mike afloat. One evening, while sketching half-heartedly during a rare break at the cafe, where he worked part-time, Ethan heard a familiar voice. "Still drawing, huh?" He looked up to see Sarah standing there, now 19 years old, her presence radiating warmth despite the chill in the air. She smiled softly, her gaze lingering on the crude sketch before him. "I remember seeing your drawings under the streetlights back home. They were beautiful." Ethan forced a laugh, trying to mask his weariness. "Beautiful doesn't pay the bills. I don't have time for luxuries like art anymore." Sarah frowned, her expression softening. "Don't say that. Art is who you are. You can't give up on it." Over the following weeks, Sarah became a constant presence in Ethan's life. She brought food to share, offered practical advice about managing finances, and encouraged him to keep creating whenever she saw him lose hope. Slowly but surely, a bond began to form between them, a fragile yet undeniable connection. But Ethan kept his distance emotionally, terrified that his struggles would drag her down too. Then came the breaking point. After a grueling week of working double shifts, Ethan collapsed at his desk in the apartment, his head resting on a half-finished sketch. Sarah burst in moments later, having been unable to reach him by phone. Her scream pierced the silence as she found him unconscious, his face pale and clammy. "Are you trying to kill yourself?" she cried, shaking him awake. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she held his hand. "I won't let you destroy yourself, Ethan. Not like this." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For the first time in months, Ethan allowed himself to lean on someone else. Sarah temporarily dropped out of school to work extra shifts, pooling her earnings with his to cover rent and basic necessities. Together, they scraped by, inching closer to stability if only barely. Amidst the chaos, Sarah handed Ethan a flyer one evening. "There's a national design competition coming up," she said, her voice filled with cautious excitement. "It could be your chance to prove everyone wrong." Ethan hesitated, doubt clouding his mind. "What if I fail again? What if it's all for nothing?" Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You won't know unless you try. And I'll be here every step of the way." For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan felt a spark of hope reignite within him. With Sarah's unwavering support, he resolved to enter the competition not just for himself, but for the boy who once dreamed of painting skylines under the stars. The grand hall buzzed with anticipation, a sea of faces illuminated by the relentless flashes of cameras. Every seat was taken, and the air crackled with tension as competitors exchanged nervous glances. Ryan Thompson sat confidently in the VIP section, surrounded by his entourage, a team of polished assistants and advisors, who whispered encouragement into his ear. His smirk carried an air of arrogance, as if victory was already his. Ethan stood at the edge of the chaos, clutching his portfolio tightly to his chest. The weight of the moment pressed down on him like a physical force. He glanced toward Sarah, who gave him a reassuring nod from her spot in the crowd. Her presence was the only thing keeping him grounded amidst the storm brewing around him. Then came the first blow. Rumors began to spread through the venue. Ryan had accused Ethan of plagiarism, claiming that Ethan's work was a blatant copy of a famous artist, an artist Ethan had never even heard of. The allegations hit like a sledgehammer. Within hours, the judges demanded proof of originality. They wanted documentation of every step of Ethan's creative process: sketches, drafts, revisions, all meticulously recorded. Ethan returned to his tiny apartment that night, panic clawing at his throat. 72 hours, that was all he had to prove his innocence. With trembling hands, he reopened old sketchbooks and unearthed unfinished drafts buried under piles of paper. Each stroke of the pencil brought back memories of sleepless nights spent hunched over his desk, fighting against hunger, exhaustion, and doubt. Sarah stayed by his side, helping him organize the materials and draft legal statements. She reached out to a lawyer friend who agreed to assist pro bono, ensuring they had evidence to counter Ryan's claims. For 3 days and nights, Ethan didn't sleep. His body rebelled against the strain, but adrenaline kept him going. Whenever exhaustion threatened to pull him under, Sarah would place a warm cup of coffee in his hand or gently massage his shoulders. "You're stronger than this," she whispered one night when tears streamed silently down his face. "Don't let them take this away from you." Finally, the deadline arrived. Ethan submitted his portfolio, complete with timestamps, photographs, and detailed notes documenting his journey from concept to completion. It was more than just a defense, it was a testament to his resilience, creativity, and unwavering passion. On the day of the final review, the atmosphere was electric. Contestants were called forward one by one to present their work. When Ethan's name was announced, he stepped onto the stage, heart pounding so loudly he feared everyone could hear it. As he explained his vision and showcased his designs, the room fell silent. But just as hope began to flicker within him, Ryan interrupted with a smug grin. "Before we proceed further," Ryan said, holding up a framed artwork, "I'd like to present this piece created years ago. Notice how strikingly similar it is to Ethan's submission." A murmur rippled through the audience. Ethan froze, his mind racing. Before he could respond, Sarah rose from her seat, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I've witnessed Ethan create this project from scratch. He didn't know about your so-called original piece until today. This accusation is nothing but a desperate attempt to sabotage his success." The judges conferred in hushed tones, their expressions unreadable. Ethan retreated to the hallway, sinking to the floor with his head in his hands. Sarah knelt beside him, gripping his hand tightly. "No matter what happens," she said softly, "you've already won. You fought for something bigger than yourself." Hours passed. The wait felt endless, each second stretching into eternity. Finally, the head judge reappeared, clearing his throat to address the anxious crowd. "After careful deliberation, we have reached a verdict. While Mr. Ryan Thompson demonstrated impressive technical skill, his conduct during this competition has raised serious concerns about integrity. In contrast, Ethan's authenticity, dedication, and undeniable talent make him the clear winner of this year's grand prize." The announcement sent shockwaves through the room. Ryan's face twisted in fury, while gasps of disbelief turned into cheers from the audience. Sarah leapt to her feet, tears streaming down her cheeks as she hugged Ethan tightly. For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to believe not just in his dreams, but in the possibility of a brighter future. The storm outside mirrored the turbulence brewing within Ethan's heart. Lightning illuminated the sprawling mansion, casting eerie shadows across its marble floors and towering glass windows. Inside, Ethan sat alone in his study, scrolling through news headlines about his newly established design firm. The glow of success was intoxicating, a far cry from the freezing nights he'd spent hunched over a rickety table years ago. Yet amidst the accolades and achievements, a lingering void remained. The doorbell rang, breaking the silence. Ethan frowned, puzzled by who could be visiting at such an hour. When he opened the door, the sight before him froze him in place. There, drenched and shivering under the relentless rain, stood his parents, older, wearier, their faces etched with lines of regret. Beside them was Jake, now 17, his features unmistakably reminiscent of Ethan's younger self. Jake stepped forward hesitantly, clutching a soggy envelope. "And Ethan, I want to pursue design. I applied to art school using one of your scholarships." His voice trembled but carried a quiet determination that stirred something deep within Ethan. Ethan stared at his brother, memories flooding back the nights they shared sandwiches. The whispered promises of support, the unwavering belief Jake had always shown him. For a moment, anger toward his parents faded, replaced by gratitude for this one person in his family who truly understood him. But then his gaze shifted to Robert and Susan. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by time and hardship. Their eyes pleaded silently, yet every fiber of Ethan's being resisted forgiving them. He remembered the ridicule, the torn sketches, the night he walked out into the storm with nothing but shattered dreams in his pocket. Robert cleared his throat, struggling to find words. "Son, we were wrong. We made mistakes, terrible ones. Our business failed and we lost everything. We have nowhere else to turn." Susan chimed in, her voice cracking. "Please, Ethan. Just give us a chance to make things right." Ethan clenched his fists, torn between resentment and compassion. Memories of his childhood surged forth unbidden, the biting cold of that fateful night, the sound of his father's mocking laughter, the ache of betrayal as he realized no one believed in him. How could he forgive them after all these years? Yet, as lightning flashed again, illuminating Jake's anxious expression, Ethan felt the walls around his heart begin to crack. Jake wasn't just asking for help, he was offering forgiveness on behalf of their fractured family. And perhaps, Ethan thought bitterly, It wasn't about forgetting the past but choosing to move forward despite it. "I'll help you get back on your feet," Ethan said finally, his voice steady but devoid of warmth. "But don't expect things to go back to how they were. What's done is done." His parents nodded mutely, tears streaming down their faces. Jake smiled faintly, relief washing over him. As Ethan ushered them inside, he couldn't shake the image of himself standing in the same rainstorm years ago, desperate and alone. This time, however, he held the power to rewrite the narrative not just for himself, but for others like him. Later that evening, Ethan sat in his study once more, staring at the scholarship application Jake had handed him. He picked up his phone and dialed Sarah. "I want to expand the scholarship fund," he said softly, "for kids who dream big but don't have anyone to believe in them." The city stretched out beneath him, a glittering tapestry of lights that pulsed with life. Ethan sat alone in his office, the panoramic view of the skyline casting a soft glow across the room. Before him lay the first painting Mr. Frank had ever given him, a simple landscape of rolling hills under a fiery sunset. It was more than just a gift. It was a reminder of the moments someone had believed in him when no one else would. Sarah entered quietly, her presence both comforting and challenging. She had moved in months ago, but their relationship remained complicated. Her voice broke the silence, trembling yet firm. "I love you, Ethan. But I can't keep living like this, always waiting for scraps of your time while you bury yourself in work. I don't want to be the person standing behind you forever." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For years, Ethan had poured every ounce of himself into his career, using success as armor against the pain of his past. But now, staring at Sarah's tear-filled eyes, he realized how much he had neglected the people who truly mattered. "I'm sorry," he whispered, pulling her into an embrace. "You're right. I've been so focused on proving myself that I forgot what really matters. I promise to do better for us." Later that evening, Ethan stood before a crowd gathered at his charity art exhibition. The gallery buzzed with energy, as attendees admired his early sketches, the same ones torn apart by Robert years ago, now restored and framed with care. Among the guests were Mr. Frank and Miss Mary, their smiles warm and proud. Jake lingered nearby, dressed sharply in a suit, his confidence radiating as reporters peppered him with questions about his recent design award. In his speech, Jake turned to Ethan, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "My brother taught me something I'll carry for the rest of my life. No matter how much the world doubts you, you must believe in yourself. He didn't just save me, he saved everyone who dared to dream because of him." As applause erupted, Ethan felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He looked around the room at Sarah holding his hand, at Jake glowing with pride, at strangers moved by his journey, and knew he had finally found peace. Alone later that night, Ethan stared at the painting once more. His thoughts drifted back to the boy who had left home in the rain, clutching nothing but broken dreams. That boy was gone now, replaced by a man who had learned to forgive without forgetting, to give without expecting anything in return. "Success isn't revenge," he murmured to himself. "It's the ability to rise above hatred and help others avoid the suffering you endured. That's what makes it meaningful." As dawn broke over the horizon, Ethan stepped onto the balcony, Sarah beside him. Together, they watched the city awaken, its lights fading into the morning sun. The future was uncertain, full of challenges yet unseen, but for the first time, Ethan felt ready to face them not alone, but with the people who had become his true family. So, what do you think about this story and my new writing style? If you enjoyed it, comment one below. If you feel it needs improvement, let me know by commenting too. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for the latest updates. Thank you so much for watching.